Hi, everybody. This is Lost Arts Radio. This is Richard Sachs, your host, and we have an exciting show tonight for you. And our friend Dara Berger is back as a guest, and you might remember she did a show with us quite some time ago on her book, which I can actually show you because I've got it. I think you can see it, right? How to Prevent Autism, and it's the subtitle is expert advice from medical professionals. It's not exactly the subtitles, but it's on the front page. And it's a really well put together book. I recommend anybody get it who hasn't read it yet. And it's just reflecting what she had learned as the parent of an autistic child and part of a community of people like that have been motivated to learn everything they could about causes and remedies. And since then, she's gotten more involved in depth with that community and in general with things affecting children. And we want to find out that some of the details of what all that involves. And rather than give a long preset introduction, I think we'll just call a large part of this show the introduction to what she's really doing. And it should make an incredible discussion. So welcome, Dara. And thanks for being here out of your busy schedule. I appreciate it.
No, it's wonderful to be here and speak to you.
So just for people that didn't listen last time and don't know anything about you, why don't you give us a little starting before you got involved in all this stuff and how it built up to where you're focused now, and then we'll get into the present developments.
Absolutely. I've always had an interest in health, is what I would call it. Now, of course, we call it alternative or holistic health because there's a difference between what the mainstream calls health. Right. But when I had my son diagnosed with autism 14 years ago, he had a vaccine injury. He suffered 2 ischemic strokes from a vaccine. And right after that, I just knew there's got to be a way to heal him. I never gave up hope, and I've been working on him ever since. And he had lost his speech overnight, like a stroke victim, and took 7 long years, but I got it back. And I never get tired of hearing his voice in the morning to say good morning or hi, mommy. It's healing is the most beautiful thing in the world that you can witness. Yeah. So
there was no question that it came from the vaccine in this case, right?
Oh no.
Some people will question that and they'll say, well, it's just a coincidence, something else happened, but that's usually not. No,
there's no, I took him to the doctor at 6 p.m. at night. Right after that doctor visit, he turned white as a ghost. He didn't look right. He was pasty. I nervously put him to bed that night, and the next morning he never spoke again for 7 years. It wasn't the slice of pizza he had for dinner.
Yeah, exactly, right. And
he had a medical intervention that went terribly wrong.
Yeah, exactly, and it's not uncommon. They tell a lot of prospective parents and parents that, it's 1 in a billion, that anything would happen, and could be a sore arm or something like that. And a lot of people believe that.
And what's scarier is first of all, they hold our children's education hostage in order to get this medical intervention, to comply with it. And that's, of course, medical fascism, and it's terrible. But besides the fact, it used to be, up until right now with this COVID vaccine, that you used to be able to go to the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, which is a program that puts $1 on each vaccine as a tax, and that's what pays out for injuries or terrible reactions or death. But what's happening now is, and only 1% of people did they actually pay, because there's a certain filing period, you have to meet a certain level of evidence. It's a really complex and difficult, and they drag it out over 8 to 10 years. And
it's also estimated that about 1% of the families of injured kids even find out about the program
in time to file, or they even have the evidence. You need to have like an ER visit with testing, and you have proof. So less than 1% ever file. And that goes for adults too, because we know the flu vaccine is one of the vaccines that injures the most people.
Yeah.
But with this new vaccine, the COVID vaccine, one of the biggest concerns is, forget about the whole mRNA and how it's made and all of that, is there's no liability at all. There's no $250,000 waiting for you if a loved one dies, which is what happens with the VICP.
If you win in that.
Yeah, there's nothing. And then here's another worse thing that a friend of mine who's an attorney brought up. Let's say you're so injured and you can't even get out of bed, you can't take care of yourself. Your insurance company, may not even pay for that injury.
Right.
Then who's taking care of you? If the government's not going to pay you for the injury, if your insurance company won't cover the injury, who's taking care of Richard?
So are you saying that this particular vaccine is the first one since 1987, when that program started, that is not eligible for the usual compensation program?
No, it's under the PrEP Act, and the PrEP Act is this new. I don't know a lot about it, but I spoke to my friend yesterday, and she said there's zero liability for this vaccine, and her fear is that after this, every vaccine will be under the PrEP Act, and then there will be zero liability, because right now, if your child is severely brain damaged, parents do win millions of dollars for lifetime care. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They have to go through hell and wait 10 years until the money starts trickling in, but that is a possibility for some parents who can prove the injury. And
they're saying there's no liability in the usual sense now. So I'm just wondering if the person who reported this understands a subtle difference. If they take away even that program,
yes,
that would be a huge step.
No, there is no program for the COVID vaccine.
Okay.
No VICP for the COVID vaccine.
And it's international lack of liability too, right? Yes. All over the world.
Yes, so this is very different. So we're talking about a vaccine that, as you know, has not been well tested, not that any are, and most of them are tested against the meningitis vaccine, which is not a true placebo. It's nowhere close, because that's a very scary vaccine in itself, that injures so many people. So we've got a really scary situation. I think most people don't even understand.
Yeah, I didn't know that they would not even be eligible for the current injury program.
Most people don't know, but my group of people follows this very closely, because many of them have, injured children, unfortunately.
Yeah, interesting.
And they don't want to re-injure any of their family members, because we know that some of it had to do with your, genetic disposition,
Mm-hmm. So you were saying that when you really got interested in this whole subject was when it happened to your son, right?
Right. And
that
then
started
I wrote
everything.
my book.
Yeah.
And because how long I had spent preventatively so that my daughter would not suffer, and I did all kinds of things that I discuss in the book, like cleaning out, staying away from chemicals and, pesticides and all of that. Right. And then I started my own podcast, just continuing to research and speak to people who know about all these, various subjects that are so important to us.
Right. So what's your main focus now? Are you writing more? Are you doing other things? What's going on?
Well, right now I am writing a screenplay. I've always felt that autism is so misunderstood. People still adhere to the idea that it's genetic, and we know it's not genetic, it's environmental. We've never had a genetic epidemic in the history of the world.
Right.
We all know it's really about epigenetics and environmental factors, that are influencing us right now. Mm-hmm. And they're endless, but the big ones we know are EMF, glyphosate, these vaccine schedules, all the chemicals and preservatives in the food, the chemtrails, it's everything. Right.
So before we were doing the show and we were talking, and you were saying you're wanting to look at the larger scope of things related to kids that are problems and solutions. What are you thinking of when you say something like that?
Well, right now I'm very focused on the issue of the masks and the lockdown. And I can't help but be focused on it because it's affecting my children individually. I had a doctor's note written for both children, and the new school district that I'm in, that I won't mention for privacy reasons, I submitted the doctor's note. It was very clear. He requested that each child wear a shield instead of a mask. I personally don't even feel like they should be wearing shields. I don't think they should be obstructed by anything on their face that hinders their concentration and their learning. For this virus that isn't thankfully even really around right now, but that isn't a risk for children, as we know.
Right. And it's also easily cured, which is very much covered up.
And that's a whole nother thing. But of course, we're dealing with bureaucracy and, the mainstream and all these schools. And in defense to some of them, they're just trying to stay open. I mean, many of the individuals in the district, they don't all agree with this, what's going on.
Right.
The protocols. Right. They feel very much, rock in a hard place. So I basically wrote this note. They denied my daughter.
Who did? The school?
Yep. They denied the doctor's note, even though it said that she would have difficulty breathing due to whatever medical condition was written down in the note.
Uh-huh.
And they also mentioned that because she's a gen ed student, general education, that she wasn't entitled. I'm not really understanding the reverse discrimination, but they granted my son the ability to wear a shield because he has significant disability, reported in their records.
Uh-huh.
But here's the fact. I was in a grocery store the other day with my son, and I put a shield on him because he can wear a mask for a couple minutes, but he couldn't wear one all day, and I don't want him wearing one all day.
No, everybody should be as smart as he is and not wear them all day like that.
Right. I mean, he has a history of strokes, which is a lack of oxygen to the brain. Why am I going to further restrict the oxygen to his brain for 8 hours a day? It's insanity.
Yeah.
I would literally be an insane person. Like, I think I should be arrested if I do that to him,
Insane or malicious. Yeah.
Malicious. So I have not been able to send him to school. He's been out of school now for 6 days, and we're trying to figure out the best program for him given the fact that he can't go to school. And I just find the whole thing so incredibly stressful,
And your daughter's going to school wearing a mask all day?
Well, I sent her to school because she really wanted to. I had to weigh something, Richard. The isolation for her caused so much stress, it changed her personality.
Right.
So what I'm doing is I'm paying attention. First of all, I don't think she's going to be in school more than 3 weeks because I think they're going to lock us down in October.
Yeah, that's
so I figured might as well let her have her fun and meet new people in the neighborhood. And, I'm going to go buy one of those oxygen measures on her finger when she gets home from school every day. And I've told her to keep a diary if she has any symptoms to report it to me, the nurse,
How old is she now?
She's 10. So I'm not happy about it at all. I really had to weigh this, and it was difficult because, children's anxiety and depression has just gone through the roof.
Well, a lot of them talk about killing themselves now because they can't see their friends.
And she literally was showing some terrible signs, nothing that drastic, but she was having anxiety where I had to give her supplements before bed and I never had to.
Right.
So it was getting to that level of, there's something really wrong here.
What grade is she in?
She's in 5th grade.
And that's the one the doctor called general education?
Yes.
That's strange. It just used to be called elementary school.
But here's the thing, Richard, which I don't get. How can a chief medical officer look at a doctor's note that says, whatever condition, if she wears a mask, it's going to lead to trouble breathing, difficulty breathing?
And just write that off.
So is the school district taking full liability if something happens to her?
No, of course not. So did you ask them that little question?
Wait, so it gets better. So then I call a civil rights attorney. I didn't want to move into a new town and call an attorney, but they just kept denying it, but not giving a reason. So I finally got in touch with a civil rights attorney just to get some, guidance. And he said, let me just write a letter. You know what I mean? Maybe this will take care of it.
Okay.
So he writes a letter. He has a phone call with the school. The attorney for the school gives him no viable reason for the denial of her exemption.
Okay.
All he kept saying is, what about the other children? And my attorney kept saying, what about the other children? We're just talking about this person's child.
The guy's perfect for his job. He can't think. Right.
So So anyways, and the other thing that I was very upset about was the temperature taking on the forehead with that infrared gun.
Exactly.
Why should we get children used to pointing a stranger pointing a gun at the head? Number one, psychologically that's damaging. And number two, we don't know what the long-term use of this infrared gun pointed right at the brain is. Why can't they use the wrist or the forearm?
Exactly.
Same body temperature.
Yeah, they could. Somebody at a much higher level decided that.
They refused.
So there's no logic, basically.
No.
Yeah, that's the kind of psychological profile they look for in those positions, along with enough years of brainwashing in public health school, if possible. Because I'm in the middle of that environment. I know what it's like. Science has degenerated into memorizing acceptable material instead of questioning everything, which is really different. Now anybody that questions things is considered anti-science.
Right.
It's just widespread insanity, thanks to the educational system and the media primarily.
I mean, thankfully, I'm happy to see people pushing back.
Yeah.
How the restaurants in New York and New Jersey got the governors to turn that around. And it just shows you that we have to push back. We can't just, I'm so used to being that lone person, you know what I mean, fighting.
Right.
But we need more people to push back, really. This mask thing, I'm kind of trying to see if I can get more people to try to do something with New York State as a whole. You know what I mean?
Right, that would be good.
The way they are in other states, nothing, there's no precedent set yet. There's no judge that's ruled on the whole mask issue,
Yeah.
And
they have this really brilliant sign they put up in some of the stores that says, "My mask protects you and your mask protects me." Which is, it's not based on anything, but the idea is that way you can pressure somebody else to wear a mask because they're endangering you. And if you realize that your mask is blocking not only your own breathing, but what you breathe out too, if it's in fact doing that, there's no basis for pressuring anybody else. If you want to wear a mask, you can. But the mask is, the best analogy I've heard is like a chain link fence to stop mosquitoes. And, if a mosquito's really distracted texting while they're flying or something and they fly into one of the bars, I guess a few of them could be blocked, but not very many. Plus the fact that the holes are too big for viruses anyway. All it does is restrict your breathing.
Yeah, it's not even just the mask. There's so much stuff that's just, bureaucracy in politics has never exactly been logical, and we know that. And it's just gotten to a new level. And, I've lost 2 friends over this. It's ridiculous.
They're comparing it to the division in families that happened before the Civil War.
Yeah.
But I think it's worse than that.
It's so much worse because there's not even logical conversation that's going on. And
no, it's training against logic, actually. The people who still try to have logic are seen as conspiracy theorists or, just they don't care about anybody else. They're child killers because they don't wear a mask. And, it's like, it's kind of a consciousness test for the world and for the country. And we're not passing yet. There's some positive signs, with people responding to this kind of stuff. But I think it's hard for normal people to realize that why would anybody want to be evil? It doesn't make sense. And somehow they've infiltrated most of the power positions in government and industry, which have essentially merged. Almost all the agencies are for-profit corporations now. And they've been infiltrated with this kind of person. And I think most people still don't relate to it because most people don't want to be evil intentionally, meaning wanting to cause harm for its own sake. And that seems to be what's happening. So, and a lot of these people, I don't know if they, the question comes up, how did they get elected? Like governors and mayors that are insane and evil and laughing when they do bad things to people. I'm not even sure they did get elected because as long as there are voting machines that can be controlled remotely, we have no idea who actually got elected.
No, we
We
never
just
did.
have an idea who got announced as the winner.
It's scary. It's
It's
all scary.
it's an intense situation.
Yeah. And up until now, it was very easy not to pay attention, if you know what I mean. Like politics,
Yeah.
I was never interested in. It was always something out there. And I have to tell you, really started to get very interested 4 years ago, because after Barack Obama for 8 years and the whole country was changing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I started to really say, okay, this isn't just politics. This isn't okay anymore. The things that are
Right. There were too many patterns
too
of what
many.
was
And
happening.
now, of course, it's really feels like life or death.
Yeah, because I think that's what it is. And it's just, people are used to thinking that's just in the movies, but the movie we're in, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And it may be a movie, but we're experiencing it as real. And what you do here matters. So, and everything has consequences. It's like going from no responsibility to realizing that every person has 100% responsibility.
Well, everything's just gone too far. And I think that's what it is. The level of censorship has just gotten too far.
Yeah.
And everything has the mask wearing and just
if CDC makes a mistake and tells the truth about something, which occasionally they may do, recently they admitted that 6% only, right, of the deaths that are being blamed on COVID-19 actually it was only 6%, not 100%, which is also a lie because there are no tests for SARS-CoV-2 in use. It's all PCR. So, which was, explained by the inventor who won a prize for it, Nobel Prize, that it's not to be used for diagnosing anything. Important safety tip, to paraphrase Ghostbusters. And, it can't be used for diagnosis unless, of course, you're testing for a genetic sequence that everybody has, and you want to be able to show at the correct times that everybody's positive. It's great for that. So when they say it's only 6%, that's not true. There's no figures at all. They don't have any accurate figures.
And the funny thing is they're now calling it an outbreak instead of a pandemic or an epidemic.
Yeah, they're also clarifying that nobody has to actually be dying for it to be a pandemic.
Right. And they keep doing very funny business, which is they keep switching numbers of COVID back over to flu because they have to have a certain numbers of flu victims in order to call it an epidemic so that they can push the flu shot. I mean, what's going on is just absurd.
Exactly, because it's so stressful for the people that need to make money from the flu shot if they can't sell that too.
Right. And also a lot of people like Judy Miskowitz, as you know, you've interviewed her, who said that coronavirus is in the flu shot. It always is.
Mm-hmm. Well, coronavirus is a big family of viruses.
Right.
And they play with the words because most people aren't paying that close attention, and they think, oh my God, you got coronavirus. Everybody who's ever gotten a cold or flu has it or had it.
Right.
And can test positive.
And then the whole thing about the patents is just when you start learning about how the government owns patents, they're the only ones who could test for the coronavirus. So these kits come from the CDC, and I don't trust anything from the CDC, you know?
No. Even though occasionally they somewhat tell the truth, like with the 6% thing.
Right.
When that happened, and I guess somebody made a mistake and they went against the agenda by doing that, they were immediately censored. And people that tried to put out that article on social media got taken down.
It's incredible.
So the president, CDC, most recently people in the Hoover Institute in Stanford, I don't know if you heard about that, but they said that everything was blown out of proportion and they got censored. So even though they're the most establishment group that you can imagine, if they make a mistake and say something against the agenda, they get censored right away.
Oh my.
And I guess the belief is that free speech is dangerous to your health. So somebody has to take care of you and tell you what you can't say.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, all the original unalienable rights that are not just listed, because you can't list them all, they're alluded to, that basically everything that's not trespassing on somebody else's rights is your right, not just from birth, I think from conception. And you can't own much property when you're just conceived, but you have other rights, like, and those are considered void now, because if you can declare an emergency and lose any of your rights, then you never had them.
Wow.
And there was some kind of a cartoon that I saw about the founders writing the Constitution, and Franklin and other people were there, and one guy was saying to another one, and it's all understood that if they declare an emergency, this is all null and void, right? And, obviously that can't be done. And there was one positive legal decision of a federal judge in the last couple of days in Pennsylvania that said there is no emergency that can set aside the Constitution. That was incredible.
Smart judge.
A judge. They didn't get that one. Not yet, anyway. So he was still saying stuff like, most of the judges now seem to be corrupted, but that one I guess they missed. So it's going to be appealed. They'll try to find a corrupt judge at a higher level. But that's the fight, I guess, between unalienable rights, because that word was specifically in there. It's just not conditional rights or privileges, or if there's no situation that's too serious, that was the amazing thing about the country, even though it hasn't been lived up to now fully, but the idea was great, that the government was only there to protect your individual freedom, as long as they did that.
And nothing they're doing is making sense. I mean, here we are, we're still on a lockdown.
Yeah, it's not making sense from their explanation, but it's making perfect sense from what they're really doing.
Yeah.
Right.
And, it's scary because you have this election coming. Everybody obviously has been hopeful that right after the election, that things will go back to normal, but they're not going to go back to normal.
Yeah.
If the Democrats take hold of we're going to be wearing masks, and they're going to be trying to push vaccines and chips and
right. And the Republicans haven't stopped it. They've taken a more passive approach, but they had both houses of Congress for a long time, and they just basically did nothing, with that opportunity. So there's a few exceptions that are speaking out about things, but not to the degree that they could. I mean, about Congressman Posey after the Vaxxed movies came out, and he wanted to expose what happened, and he worked on that for years, and he couldn't get any agreement from either side.
I know.
They're all
shameful. It's beyond shameful, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, we're in a system where it's all blackmail and bribes that control government.
Yeah.
In industry.
They've had that information for so many years, just direct information.
Yeah. So I guess our job is, there's the chess puzzle, like they used to have in newspapers, right? Yeah. With a little chessboard, and here's where the pieces are. You have 3 moves to win the game. What are they? I mean, really, that's what it comes down to.
No, I agree with you. And the whole thing with Senator Posey, just so you know, it's a kick in the face to every family who has a child with autism. And I'll tell you why personally, because it's bad enough that my son's life was derailed, and he's still so affected. I'm still working on him every day, and he continues to make wonderful progress, and he's happy and he's doing well. But what they've robbed of him, of his life, and where he should have been right now are two completely different things. And for there to be vital information that can save other children from being robbed of what was taken from my son and what was taken from me.
Right.
Experience with my son. And it's a huge slap in the face. Like, we don't care. They know what's causing the autism epidemic.
I think they're real clear about not caring.
Yeah, they don't care.
They're clear about what they do care about too, because it took a lot of dedicated work to arrange the lockdown. That didn't just happen effortlessly.
No.
Are there any numbers about estimates of how many people are having to deal with that same situation?
That I'm dealing with the masks?
No, with children that are damaged to some degree.
What are the estimates? I have a good friend of mine. I'll get you the estimates. He would have an idea, but it's enormous.
It's not 1 in a million. I'm pretty sure of that.
No. It's so far from 1 in a million.
I mean, there would be 300 kids nationwide in America if that were the case.
I forget the number of autism. I'm afraid to misspeak. I think it's like 1 million new cases, but a year. But
well, and I was wrong. It wouldn't be 300 because that's out of the whole population.
Yeah.
Out of the kids, it's much higher.
It's really high. And if the CDC is stating that's 1 in 20 in New Jersey, it's, really.
Yeah. When it used to be 1 in tens of thousands. And in fact, it was almost never seen.
It was never seen. I just interviewed a speech pathologist, Karen Ramsey, who's also a nutritionist. She talks about a raw vegan diet to help children with autism.
Neat.
Which I know would interest you.
It would. She's
been a speech pathologist for 47 years. And she talks about when she first started out, she never saw a case of autism.
Yeah. I would really like to talk to her because I think, there's a lot of suggestion from observation that detoxification of the body, you can't get young kids to go on water fast too well. They get upset. Yeah. But at least they can do fresh juices, everything organic, and the raw stuff is really powerful if you can manage to do that completely. But what I've gotten into recently in the last couple of years, I guess, well, actually I started looking at it about 15 years ago, but more seriously in the last couple of years, is that there used to be sanitariums, or I don't know if the word is sanitaria, but, places like that around the country and the world where people would approach or respond to disease conditions of all kinds with lifestyle change and retreats and diets and fasting and juice and all kinds of things, and sunlight and exercise and sleep and, relaxation, good environment. And one of the interesting ones was in California around late 1800s to 1915 or something. Mm-hmm. And it was run by Charles Sanford Porter, who was a medical doctor. And he reported, even though now he'd get, probably killed for saying this, I don't think he has to worry because he's not physically alive anymore, but he was running a sanitarium where they basically got full recovery of every condition that they treated using 100% diet of organic raw milk. And this would freak out the vegans completely because most of them think that it's the worst thing, the most evil food in the solar system or possibly in the whole galaxy. I'm not sure. But they were getting complete cures. They just couldn't find anybody with autism to test it on. And they couldn't find any cancer, because basically nobody had cancer. But they got complete recovery. And, what I had found after years on raw vegan approach is that I was lacking something, and I lost muscle mass and body heat and energy and psychological stability. And I met a lot of dedicated raw vegans that have exactly that situation. They get clean, but they get frail.
Right.
And I didn't want to go back to cooked food because the difference in how you feel is so overwhelming that I didn't want that problem anymore. So I finally had to become I don't know what you'd call it, a heretic to the raw vegan religion, I guess, and try organic raw milk. And I got back 30 pounds of muscle mass, all the stability.
Wow.
It took 3 months for the gut to adjust because I supposedly had lactose intolerance, which is the inability to break down milk sugar. Yeah. And I just had a theory that the enzymes that you need to do that are in the milk. And if your gut's not adapted to it, you don't have them. Right. So in 3 months, that took care of it. And then it was digestible. And, I'd like to see what that would do to help autistic kids too.
Yeah, maybe a lot of autistic kids do try raw milk or camel milk or...
Yeah, but with what else, you see? I'm saying 100% raw diet.
Right, with the milk.
With the milk, raw vegan plus milk.
Yeah, you would really enjoy talking to this person, Karen. I'm going to introduce you to her.
That'd be neat. Yeah, I'd like that.
Because she had a son who had life-threatening asthma. And she had a grandmother who had emphysema. And the grandmother read a book and went on a raw vegan diet, and guess what disappeared?
Oh, absolutely. The congestion would just go away completely.
So, and she put her son on a raw vegan diet, and the asthma was gone. He's fine.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That should, that kind of thing is never allowed to be known on a large scale.
She's very interesting.
It works it's been working for thousands of years. I mean, if you've looked at the Essene Gospel of Peace, Volume 1, that's an account from 2,000 years ago. And they were recommending exactly the same stuff. That was at the time of Jesus. And it obviously didn't get into the Bible for various reasons. But that was recommending raw vegan plus raw milk.
Yeah.
And it was saying, fast first, if you can, on water, and then go into that. And it was explaining how it works. That was a long time ago. And modern science is supposed to be, so advanced now. I mean, before 1950, nobody knew anything, right? According to current belief. So it's, wouldn't it be fun to see some real research done?
I know.
Not the kind they're doing now, but the real stuff.
Absolutely. It's interesting that we're going back to all the treatments that have been around for years and years before pharmaceuticals or over-the-counter medications.
Yeah.
And when it comes to trying to heal autism, that's what we do. Everything natural, everything that's been around.
So obviously you're an enemy of the state because you're endangering a $3.5 trillion business of that's what the money they make on people being sick all the time, just in the U.S.
Yeah, we don't like pharmaceutical products in my family. We don't do well on them. I don't buy anything over the counter at a CVS. I just, I don't make it a habit to buy anything where I can't understand or pronounce the name and the ingredient.
Yeah. Well, isn't it weird that we have the belief that toxic chemicals are medicine? I mean, we should notice something wrong with that picture, right? Especially since everybody that uses it gets worse in the long run.
I know. It's true.
So, I don't know. We need some ideas, creative ideas for solutions, because we can see where the whole thing is going. Right. So, I mean, you've been looking at it for quite a while. What patterns do you see that might be suggesting clues for what we could do?
As far as the lockdown measures?
Well, you're talking about lockdowns and masks, right? You were saying those are two focuses.
Well, I'm really focused also on talking about kids. You and I, we can kind of psychologically wrap ourselves around what's going on because we've known for decades that this what's going on. But for kids, I think it's really hard, and it's really important to try to make sense of things for them. Do you know what I mean? And to them. And
what you're going to tell them to explain what's happening?
I do with my daughter, and I do it in a way that, is sort of, I'll use the word gentle, in a way that she can understand it. And just to make you laugh how smart my daughter is, she woke up this morning, the TV was on mute because I was looking for what time it was. She was with me, and she said, "Oh my God, Mommy, what a joke. There's a commercial for the New York Times saying truth is essential." She's like, "They're they're the worst." And she's like, "I love it." 10 years old, like she knows.
We need to become as smart as she is.
She's funny. Wow. So she really does understand what's going on. And she is able to compartmentalize it, thank God. She's able to go to school. She knows she has to wear the mask, even though nothing about the mask makes any sense. And she knows that, when she talks to people, she's careful. She also knows not to get into political conversations, because what happens is a lot of parents will talk about politics around their kids because the kids are home so much. And, they really, and I hate to point fingers, but certain parties are just vehement about the other party being bad, you know?
Well, I mean, they're letting everybody know that Donald Trump actually caused this virus.
Right. I mean, I
And he
have a friend
caused
that
the
jokes,
economic
and
problems
she
too.
says they blame him for everything. Oh, I have a headache. I'm constipated. It's Trump's fault. You know?
That's Trump. That's Trump, clearly. Yeah.
Right. So she knows, you know, and I'm trying to keep her not stressed. So we talk about what's going on. I make sure she spends a certain amount of time in nature or listening to music or cooking, you know, anything that relaxes her. And it's different for every child, but it's essential right now.
Right.
That you lower their stress the best you can. You know what I mean? And I do the same for myself. My son and I go to the beach every day for an hour.
Wow.
You know, just to ground, to be in nature, you know.
That's wonderful.
You know, because a lot of people, I think they get to, what I saw with my daughter on the lockdown is, you know, she was on the computer all day with school and she was getting more and more stressed and she was constantly texting her friends. So she was on a device and stress eating. She was grabbing bags of, you know, healthy chips, but they were still chips in a bag.
Yeah. Yeah.
And stress eating all day.
And living inside a screen is not very good for your brain, especially when it's developing as a kid, huh?
Which is why she chose to go back in person. And
And the things that you're saying are essential for kids are actually essential for everybody.
Exactly.
It's just that we've gotten hardened to not having it. And
it's essential right now is to do anything you can, whatever it is, art, music, meditation, walks, whatever relaxes you.
Yeah.
Schedule twice a day, morning and late in the day, something that's going to truly not stress you. Or maybe it's a phone call with a friend every day. I have a friend I chat with every day, and we laugh about certain things we saw, or, you know, and make fun of it, because that's the way to really,
you know, what is a kid? A kid is the being there, that's being a person. That kid is inside everybody, right? Maybe with a developed, hardened exterior that you've put on to survive in the world and everything, but the kid is actually still in there, you know, maybe being held hostage or something, but they're not gone.
No.
So everybody needs to take care of the kid that they are actually.
Yeah, and this whole living in fear thing is, you know, it's very sad how fearful you see many adults and how they're making their children. And so I try to talk a lot about the kids and how to, because what they're dealing with at school is so psychologically damaging. They're making the children sit at desks 6 feet apart with plexiglass, with a mask. Wow. They're not allowed to share colored pencils. They're not allowed to touch anything that anybody else has touched. They're making them be afraid of everybody and everything.
People are dirty. That's what they're
learning. They're making them believe they're dirty.
And they're dirty too, because they're a danger to everybody else.
Right. So so I talk to her all the time. And one of the things I tried to do over the summer, and I'm still trying to do, is to have people over my house.
Good.
I want her to feel, and she always, when they leave, she's always like, oh my God, that felt so good. It felt so normal. You know, and I sent her to camp for 5 weeks, and I won't name the camp, but
yeah,
he said they touched each other. It was normal. It was fantastic.
Wow, and they didn't all die or anything.
Nobody got COVID, and it was so, I saw a different person. I saw my old daughter.
Right.
For those 5 weeks.
So we should all be living at camp, at least in that mentality. Right.
So, you know, and I've thought of trying to do a homeschool co-op. I couldn't find one in time. If we go on lockdown again, I'll start my own. I'm not going to allow her to get isolated and stressed.
That would be good. We had Alex Newman on a little while ago talking about that.
Very important.
Yeah.
You know, and I've got to figure something out for my son, because I was going to send him, and you know, think about something for a child that has issues with communication, even though he speaks. These children rely heavily on nonverbal expression.
Exactly.
They do, on body language, facial expression, and to be in a classroom where everybody's wearing a mask and the other kids are wearing a mask. Can you even imagine how damaging that is for a special needs child?
Is he sitting there wearing a welder's face shield, basically, or?
No, I put a shield on, and has a sensory issue. He's uncomfortable with it, so I haven't sent him to school. And, I'm trying to decide between a homeschool program and the virtual. The virtual is the computer, and I don't love that. I'd rather someone come to the house or me teach him. But it's very sad. Why should he be put in a position not to be social when this virus is not a threat for him?
Right, exactly. Yeah, the other danger too is that the things that they are and are not teaching in school have gotten worse and worse, right? I mean, even...
I know. My daughter's last school, and I won't name the name again, I'm trying to be politically correct, they brainwashed her, okay?
Yeah.
Come home spewing stuff and even lecturing my husband and I at 9 years old.
Well, they teach them to reform the parents.
Oh, and here's the worst, Richard. After the election 4 years ago,
they
sent out a letter the next day telling all the parents that they had therapists on staff for any of the parents or the children who needed therapy to deal with the results of the election.
Exactly, because nobody actually voted for that guy. That it's a national disaster. He just snuck in, and everybody knows it's a catastrophe. I saw the same thing.
I got to tell you, I was so angry. I wanted to march in there and just, take her out. I was so annoyed by that because, as you know, what is a teacher supposed to do? He's supposed to teach both sides, and then the child is supposed to decide for themselves by individually thinking.
Right.
And they don't allow that anymore.
And it's all in the name of science and taking care of you and health. And I mean, like you said, what was it? The Do No Harm Act.
Yes.
It just got put in. They know what people want to see. Do no harm is actually a good idea. And so they still name the things like that. I guess they'll do that until they think nobody knows anymore. But
people don't know about it. Unfortunately, it's until it's too late. But there is something that listeners can do. Listeners can call up their individual senators and congresspeople and tell them not to vote for Kamala Harris's new bill, Do No Harm, which is the way you're right to say no to any policy or law due to religious reasons.
That's amazing. And has it been proposed now in Congress?
It's been put in. So now is the time for everybody to call and say, do not vote for this.
So it's HR something.
Yeah, I'll get you the number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if you start interacting with most of these, I think they call them representatives, right? As if they actually represented people. Well, they do, but not the people you think. But when you start interacting with these people, what is wrong with most of these people? The men and the women it's a good demonstration of equality for women because they're just as bad. And it's like, I thought I could just come in here and have a logical discussion or on the phone or whatever. First of all, most of them hire a staff to keep you away. So they don't have to deal with constituents because that's so irritating. And they're really busy. They don't have time for that anyway. And the other thing is that if you ever do get to talk to them, and I've talked to some, it's like, I knew we were in a large mental hospital. That's what realistic view of the world is like right now. But this is like a special severe case ward where we're in worse condition than the general public. I guess that's why they get supported to be there.
Oh, and Richard, I have to tell you a funny story. When I discovered this was back in 1999. I was a television news reporter on Long Island, a local show every night. And I used to have to interview the county executive almost daily because there was such a budget deficit that everybody was up in arms over. Mm-hmm. Anyways, I'd be sitting there with my microphone and I would ask him, I had a few really good questions, right? Hard-hitting questions.
Yeah.
And every time I put my microphone, he would talk about something that had nothing to do with my question. So I'd ask my question a second time, same thing. He'd give me some soundbite that wasn't even on the same subject, okay? Then I'd ask him one more time, a third time, And I finally said, what the hell's wrong with this guy? I'm trying to have a conversation with him, and he's just talking about whatever he wants to talk about.
That's like a certain kind of blocking defense in martial arts, right?
And that's when I realized how corrupt the media was. And that was so long ago, before anyone else even knew. And I ended up quitting my job like a year later and went into documentary filmmaking because I said this whole media thing is just so ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's
if
you
want to advance in that system, you have to be totally comfortable lying.
Yeah, which clearly is not me.
Or at least reading the lies off a teleprompter.
And the other part that I hated about it was you had to tell half a story. So you could know all the details to a story, but if your news director didn't allow you to tell the story, you couldn't tell it. Or if a lot of times I waited outside a police station for hours only for a chief to come out and tell us what line we were allowed to tell the public and air that night.
Yeah, in the name of safety.
Right, so it's like I could only tell half the story. And then
and you knew everybody was assuming it was the whole story.
Yeah, so it was terrible.
Yeah. So the clues that you've got so far for, in the direction of remedies, one is definitely staying in touch with nature, right? And nature is not insane like humans. And it has a good influence on everybody.
Absolutely. Some time in nature, and then any activity that's going to relax your child. If it's making homemade slime, if it's doing art, whatever it is, find a few of those activities and encourage them to do them or do them with your child.
Yeah, actually, if you do them with the child, then you get the benefit yourself too.
Exactly.
I think that's great.
And then obviously solid nutrition at this time is very important because it's going to keep the brain and the body feeling good. It's going to keep the immune system boosted because you don't want your child getting sick these days. Of course they're going to, but the reason you don't want them getting sick is because then they're going to test them for COVID.
Exactly. It's getting too dangerous to cough or sneeze anymore.
I know. I wrote a post.
You can if you do that.
Just being able to cough without feeling like someone's going to call the police.
No, you have to run for the door before anything like that happens.
So
it is amazing. Terrible. And once you get tested, you get put in a database, even though the test is totally bogus and says nothing, except that, you don't even have to get tested to be positive. Now you can be in line waiting for a test if you're brainwashed enough to actually want to be tested for some strange reason. And if you don't have time to go and they take your information and you leave and you don't get tested, they notify you later that you're positive.
Right. And who wants to get that Q-tip? This virus is supposedly so dangerous that I have to wear a mask, but yet they have to stick a Q-tip all the way back in my blood-brain barrier to get a sample.
Exactly. Yeah, that's called the cribriform plate. That's a little piece of bone that's a millimeter thick, supposedly. I haven't seen one, but that's what they say. And it's like a screen with all the nerves to the olfactory mechanism for smell going right through there to the brain, and that's where they want to put the Q-tip. And
I don't even understand that.
Well, you can just guess from the history of the people who design things like that it's probably not for a really friendly reason.
No,
and people have pain for weeks sometimes after that.
And I've heard terrible stories about it.
But you're right. If it's that dangerous, that just like singing really spreads it. We know that, right? Especially if you're in a church when you're singing. It's not as bad if you're singing like in your own house, but if you're singing in a group like at a church, forget it. Everybody's dead. So if it's coming out of your exhaled breath, all they'd really have to do is hold a Q-tip in front of your breath.
And it's like, and nothing makes sense. And I think that's the part. I'm really a person of principle, and it bothers me that you can walk into a restaurant, you have to wear a mask till you get to your table, but then you can take it off, and for 2 hours you can eat and drink with people that are like 6 inches away from you. But my daughter can't sit at a desk without wearing a mask.
Exactly.
It just makes no sense.
And you're exempt from everything if you're a protester.
Right. And
depending on what you're protesting, right? If you're protesting the lockdowns, you're very dangerous.
And it's just like, if the world is so dangerous, why am I allowed to wear the same mask over and over? Like, I have a mask that I'll wear into a store for a few minutes, especially when I'm with my daughter, because she doesn't like altercations with strangers. And
Yeah,
that was happening when I refused to wear it. So she asked me just to wear it in the store with her. So I've gotten used to just popping into a store for a few minutes, putting it on, but I haven't washed it in a month.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and if you wore it all the time, it would be not good for you.
Right. So, but like, if it was so dangerous, why doesn't it need to be put in a hazmat bin?
Yeah, I think they figure the public is so dumbed down now, they're not going to get to the point of questioning that. You know, except for the conspiracy theory crazy people, and they can be dealt with other ways.
So my thing is, I really encourage that people need to push back. And if it means being uncomfortable, and I'm not saying you should go in and get into altercations with people at the supermarket every day. I'm saying when there's a moment to be able to assert yourself and push back in a way that's not going to cause you harm, you know, I think that people need to do it. And maybe it's joining someone else's fight and being not a nameless, but a person that's listed on their fight, you know, or showing up at a rally or a protest, you know, an actual real peaceful protest.
Right, yeah, where they don't like blow up buildings and shoot anybody and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. And some of the groups like the healthyamerican.org, right, they're teaching how to actually, individuals can approach not the employee, because the employee is just trying not to get fired, but the actual manager or owner of a business, and very friendly, you know, in a nice way, explain to them that they're breaking the law and they don't really want to get sued, and you're just helping them to avoid being illegal. And here are the details. And they're putting those together for people to hand out.
And the one thing that I'm very passionate about, Richard, is I'm not okay what they're doing to the children. And what my biggest fear is, I think my daughter's going to be okay because I'm cognizant of everything going on, and we talk every day openly. But I'm really worried that in another 5 to 10 years, we're just going to have this incredibly large group of children suffering from mental illness at a younger and younger age.
Well, and a lot of them already do. It's just going to get much more severe.
And I'm terrified for that. So I wish parents would fight back now, because if we all just comply, you know, our children don't have a future. We don't have, you know, a good.
And it's actually easier to not comply now than when they're busy genetically modifying your body.
Yeah, and it's not easy, Richard. I'm not going to tell you that this hasn't been stressful, what I dealt with just with my daughter's school.
You know? I know.
But I think it's important, you know?
Yeah, it is. And I think one of the big challenges is the educational system that trained the people who are now running those schools, because they've come out of, you know, so-called higher education, higher indoctrination that teaches people what's acceptable to think and how to behave in the system, and how to run a school, and how to be an administrator, and how to be a public health official. And you are disqualified from those positions if you're open to thinking. And so I think they select them that way. So you just have to get relaxed and used to the idea that you may be talking to people that are so indoctrinated that the degree of the conditioning is like out of some sci-fi movie.
I know. So I think it has to start at a state level. You know, each state is going to have a group of parents fight back. That's the only way to do it. I mean, we've learned that's how the enemy does it. They go state by state, right?
Yeah, right. And they choose certain ones to start in, and then let it spread to the others and things like that. So
now we need to do the same thing. There are some mask lawsuits going on in certain states. New Jersey, I know that there's one going on in New Jersey, and hopefully they get a decent judge who recognizes, you know, the constitutionality of the whole issue. And my thing is, I don't need you to abolish mask wearing, but I think there should be choice. If you're going to restrict oxygen to my body, I should be given the choice to. Everybody reacts differently. It's, you know, medicine is not black and white. Nothing is black and white. And if I have an effect from restriction of oxygen to my body and you do not, well, I should be given the choice that I cannot wear it.
Mm-hmm. And that includes access to information. You can't have censorship and have real choice.
No.
Because people don't even know what the choices are.
And I looked at I don't know if you've seen the mask study from 2015 in the BMJ, which stated that cloth mask wearing, which is mostly what everybody's wearing, certainly the kids at school, actually increased infection because it gets moist, and the moisture retention all day, is a breeding ground for bacteria.
Exactly. And your body is trying to breathe out some stuff it doesn't want. And that's all trapped for the next inhale, right? Right.
And it's a lot of carbon dioxide that you're not supposed to be, and your blood becomes more acidic. You're more prone to almost every illness.
And it's supposed to go out and help the plant growth on the planet, not be breathed by humans again.
Right. And I always say to people, there are very few things that you would try to keep in your body that your body's trying to get rid of, right?
Yeah.
We wouldn't drink our own urine.
I can't. Well, few people do, but it's not very popular.
No. We when things are supposed to be expelled by the body, we allow them to be expelled.
Yeah, I can't really think of any exceptions. That if there's waste coming out, it's not really supposed to be your food.
No.
Or what you breathe.
No.
So I guess there's no way around, even though you go in nature and you take care of yourself and get your health back, learn how to do that, get beyond the stage of thinking that eating toxic chemicals is the way to be healthy, because that doesn't really work very well. Learn how to do it in harmony with nature, but then make yourself strong enough so that you can withstand having to have some communication with people that are unreachable.
And another thing I would say is pay attention to your kids. When I say pay attention, not just pay attention, but really watch. I mean, I saw a horrible story on Facebook of a father whose child broke their computer screen, and he was very into gaming, and that's probably how he interacted with his friends, and the father wanted to make him work for it and not buy him a new one. And I understand all of that. I mean, how many times has my daughter broken something? You want them to learn the value of something, right? And treat it properly.
Yeah.
But then there's also, oh my God, this is the only connection to the outside world they have. And I remember my daughter broke her iPad and she flipped her lid. She was screaming things I never heard come out of her. I hate my life. She was just saying these things. And I looked at her and I said, this is just an iPad. I'll get you 10 more. Stop it. Not that I want to buy her 10 more, but I wanted her to understand this is nothing. This is not important. I understand it's your way of the outside world, which is why you're going to get another one. So pay attention, to your child's psychological state and really deal with that state. And, something to them that might seem like a really big deal and you think it's overkill, it might be because it's a big deal right now because of what they're going through in the lockdown. And so just really pay attention, because these kids they're committing suicide in droves.
Yeah, I know.
Under 10 even. I can't even fathom how a 10-year-old even thinks of that, let alone acts on it, knows how to act on it, any of that. And it's beyond scary, Richard, but they're saying that there's normally 30,000 deaths by suicide in this country a year. Mm-hmm. And I did a documentary on it, which is why I know, and there's normally 20,000 homicides. They're seeing that many suicides each month.
How many of those are kids?
I don't know. It's a great question. The children have been increasing over time, which is another interesting. So you have autism increasing, you have suicides increasing. When are we going to look at the way that we're running the world, or the way that we're interacting in the world is doing tremendous damage?
Well, and not all of this is we, actually. I mean, if there's a group that's in control, that's driving it in this direction, I think one of the easy things to be falling into a little bit in thought pattern is, why are we doing that? We're not. Yes. Most of us are not causing all this stuff. And I think, one of the big themes of the people in charge is that this is all our fault. You know, for example, breathing without a mask is your fault. And all the world problems are because you're not listening to the rulers enough. Where in most cases, it's that this small, very small group in charge at the top of the power structure is pretty much causing almost all the major problems in the world that I can think of.
Absolutely.
Even climate change is primarily man-made and caused by geoengineering.
I mean, all these fires. I had to laugh. My husband, I'm constantly teaching him. He's on the phone with clients in California who can't go outside and breathe.
I know, the air is so bad. Right.
And they actually think that this is climate change because that's what they're being taught by the media every day. And I looked at my husband, I said, come over here. And I showed him a video of a guy on a motorcycle with a Molotov cocktail that he's throwing,
right,
creating another fire. And I'm saying, you know, like...
And they're saying that Facebook is now saying that anybody who suggests that certain groups of people are actually starting fires in California is banned immediately.
I mean, Richard, I saw the most uncomfortable thing. It was Fox. There was the show Outnumbered. There was a clip on Facebook this morning of Newt Gingrich talking about Soros funding all these fires, and the Fox reporter was just like, okay, let's not bring Soros into this. We need to move on. She just like, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's on the list of things you can't talk about.
So
they try to tell people before they interview them if it's going to be live, never mention anything on this list.
Right. It's really getting uncomfortable when everybody's leaving YouTube. I watched this person, Vernon Coleman. Do you know who he is?
Yeah.
And he's fabulous. I love his little, you know, take on things on YouTube.
He's very good. Right.
You know, they took him down. And he's not even saying anything so inflammatory.
I know. Yeah, I tried to reach him, and he's really afraid of being more public.
Well, he's still public because he's on this brand YouTube. I don't even know exactly what it is, but I'm going to go look for him because I like to watch his, you know, and he's such an interesting It's so interesting that he's even nervous because he was the first person to talk about like the dangers of benzodiazepines and all kinds of other important subject matters over the years.
Yeah, he's excellent. The other thing about the fire issue that you were mentioning is that not only are they intentionally apparently hiring a whole bunch of people in these groups, in the so-called protesters, which are really terrorist rioters. Yeah. Those are the same people they used to start the fires because it suits the agenda. But the reason the fires turn into unnatural, 2,000 degree fire that can melt glass and steel is that they've been dumping explosive metal dust on the forest for decades now. So they've been priming those fires, not just with the undergrowth that is illegal to remove now, but with the metal dust because it makes it burn much, much differently. But they've got other technology too that will allow them to burn a particular building that's targeted and not warm up the plants 10 feet away.
I know. I remember that from last year. It's incredible. That was going on last year. You had pictures of beautiful trees and like the house is burned down. And
yeah, it's vaporized basically, right?
Yes, it's
I think I forgot to mention
going
that.
On, and the weather, and it's all and you just say to yourself like, they don't even care how obvious things are. And then
not anymore. I think they've calculated that we're not going to notice anyway.
And what bothers me is like even friends who are supporting, the side that is doing all of this, I don't even understand how they don't notice and defend all the things that are going on, like the statues being ripped, the people being killed, all the stores being looted. How are
You're talking about the peaceful protests, I think, right?
Yeah, it's incredible to me how they defend everything in their mind. Like when Pelosi was caught getting her hair done in the salon without the mask that shouldn't have been open. Yeah. I said to myself, how is, X and Y, these two friends of mine, even defending her? Are they saying, oh, she was definitely set up? I mean, like, how are they defending her?
Yeah, I mean, Fauci's been out without a mask all the time laughing and everything. And
Cuomo too.
Cuomo too. Newsom was just giving a talk in the fires, laughing and really happy, standing amid the ruins, that destroyed all these people's houses, and just obviously having a great time and saying, now the debate's over. There's no question that climate change is not only our fault, but it's destroying the world. And the way to escape from it is follow orders.
And he looked like a psychopath. I mean, literally, like, the eyes are the windows to the soul. We all know that.
Exactly.
And his eyes, and they just screamed sociopath.
You noticed that.
Of course. It's the first thing I noticed.
You're not supposed to notice that kind of stuff. So anyway, countermeasures, positive things, nature with the kids especially, but this has a rub off on the parents with good effects too. And providing only good food for the kids.
As much as possible.
As much as possible. Not stuff that, learn. First of all, don't just do it because you memorize good food. Learn about why you would even care to do that. That it's one of the biggest factors in what happens to their bodies. And then positive conversation, explaining what's going on. And some interaction with all these authority figures, even if they seem totally insane.
Absolutely. One of the ways to help them with the food, I'll just mention, is if your child likes to cook, capitalize on that. First, start with making the food that they like eating. That way you get them in the kitchen, and it's going to taste better than it does out of the bag or the box.
That's right.
First step. Secondly, if you've got a little scientist, get them outside and plant some food or plant some
that would be incredible.
plants. Yeah. I mean, so just be creative how you can do it. And then eventually, like right now, my daughter's at the point where she's making a smoothie every day on her own when she comes home from school.
Wow.
She wants to be a big person. She wants to be left alone in the kitchen. And I see her. She's making her own smoothie, putting in different fruits and things.
Wow, that's
But
incredible.
it all started with 7-8 years ago, just getting her in the kitchen.
Yeah, it's a great idea, which requires that the parents learn, like how does food work and how does one of the things we've been taught is that we're not smart enough to learn how things work. You need experts and hopefully teams of experts. Otherwise, you would have no idea. You're just, an insignificant person. And that's the opposite of the truth. Everybody watching this, you're incredibly brilliant. You're not just smart enough to learn that. You're so brilliant that it's very important to the power structure you never find that out. So you can learn anything you want. And if it can't be broken down to common sense, it doesn't make it, it's not true. Anything real can come down to common sense.
And now is a good time to take up a new hobby. And maybe that hobby is cooking.
Yeah,
maybe it's
painting. And gardening, like you said.
Right, because we all have more, and you can do it in an apartment. They have special planters where you can plant multiple things that in a shelving system. So there's so many things that you can do right now and get your children involved and away from the screen a little bit. I used to limit screen time, Richard, because I don't love it, but I have to say, I allow it right now because it's good for her mental health that she's texting with they FaceTime all the time, the face on the screen, and I see her laughing and I see her having fun. So I know that there's going to come a time where I'm going to be able to try to limit it again, but now is not the time. No,
I think you have to be aware of that and really sensitive to it. The other thing is that screens can be either hardwired or wireless.
Yes.
And it's really important to dump the wireless ones, right?
And I have the iPads. I always buy the cellular.
What does that mean? I'm not sure.
So you can buy an iPad that's just Wi-Fi or cellular Wi-Fi. I always buy that cellular Wi-Fi because I keep them on the cellular.
Right. So it can be hooked up to the phone, basically.
Well, no, it's just that the cellular is less EMF than Wi-Fi.
Okay. Well, the other thing people have to turn off to make them less dangerous is that there's a part in the computer that is searching for Wi-Fi.
Yes, you have to have that off.
That has to be specifically turned off.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's a spike like a smart meter, kind of looking for things,
And normally, I like to hardwire in through cable. Right now, we're renting a house, so we're under Wi-Fi temporarily. But yes, being on a screen all day through cable or some other, is such a difference.
And outside too, sunlight, fresh air, grounding, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So I think the main hope is in what they most want to hide, which is who everybody is. That not only are they brilliant and can learn anything we want to learn, but there's a deeper quality that people have totally lost touch with in most cases that words wouldn't even touch, but you could call it consciousness, self-awareness, and if that wakes up, I don't think the dark side can compete with it at all, because they have malice that they're not willing to drop. And as long as they do, they can't really access consciousness.
And it's very hard to connect right now, Richard, because you go into a grocery store. Normally, when you go into the same grocery store every day, you get to know the people behind, the counter, and you say hi to them and you have chit chat. But when you're sitting there with a mask, keeping your expression, and they're telling you, because they have to, you're too close to the person in front of you, you're not 6 feet away, sitting on your sticker.
Exactly,
it's hard to want to be friendly with that person who's telling you to get on your sticker.
Right.
And it's just making the world just so much more impersonal, harder. And I try to get past that and make it a point to say hello and be nice no matter what, because you never know what someone else is going through. The person you're talking to could have just lost their home. They might not be on the table for their kids that night. And so this is especially a time to be extremely kind.
And it goes right along with the fact that if you dig deep enough, I know a lot of people don't believe this, but what I see is that even the worst appearing people are not intrinsically bad.
Yes.
They're buried under mountains of programming, and they need rescuing more than anybody. So, kindness to anybody is worth it. It doesn't have to be justified. It's a gift. So before we end, I want to look at what you're doing now, how people can stay in touch with it, about your book, anything else that, you want everybody to stay up with and be in contact with you, or things that you think are good prospects for projects they should be aware of, anything like that.
Sure. My book is still available, How to Prevent Autism, on Amazon or other online retailers.
Okay.
I have a podcast show that I do, not as often as, and consistently as yours, Every Choice Counts. So they can go to either my website, daraberger.com. They could go to everychoicecounts.org. I am currently writing a screenplay because, as I said earlier, autism is misunderstood, and we haven't had a movie about autism since Rain Man, and Rain Man is not indicative to the autism epidemic. That was about a savant, and high functioning, and that's not the type of autism we see readily every day.
Right.
These children are suffering, they're in terrible pain. They have all kinds of, physiological issues, seizures and, just terrible things, irritable bowel syndrome. So I'm working on that. I just wrote a chapter for a book that's going to be given away to people. It's called Autism Essentials. My chapter was on my story, How to Prevent Autism. But there's also stories on how to heal it, and it's a book that's going to be made available for free, which is wonderful. I'm so happy to be a part of that project. I think
where are people going to be able to get that one?
I believe online, and so that so I'm always doing that kind of and I'm always working on things, doing blogging and writing articles, and I'll continue to do that, but I can be found on Facebook and Twitter also. And I'm also health coaching. So anybody who is interested in my help, I specialize in helping women pre-pregnancy in order to prevent autism and chronic illness, and preventing it in babies and young children. And you can find me at darabergerhealthcoaching.com.
So the first one was daraberger.com, and then there's also darabergerhealthcoaching.com. Exactly. And that's a topic that could be a whole show in itself, because I think I asked you, and you said you hadn't heard of her, this lady, Janice Barcelo.
No, I hadn't.
She's an expert in birth trauma. And that is a big, probably part of something that you touch on.
Oh, yes.
In the health coaching, because you can think of a lot of sources in the typical protocol that happens at hospitals.
I don't think there's a child who's been diagnosed with autism that probably didn't have some level of birth trauma.
And how many kids or grown-ups, supposedly grown-ups, I know they're rare, but there are some, that also don't have health trauma or birth trauma of some kind.
Yeah, I mean, I consider a C-section birth trauma.
Yeah, and there's ways to make it look like you have to do that with drugs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, that could be a whole show on absolutely. I wrote an article for greenmedinfo.com just on C-sections and, birth choices.
Yeah. What about the male
Very passionate about that subject.
Male genital mutilation that is typically carried out on almost everybody?
I know.
Yeah. So there's some more stuff to talk about.
So much more.
But for now, daraberger.com, the book on Amazon, darabergerhealthcoaching.com, and that's specifically, is that for everybody or for just women that are about to become mothers?
No, that is for anybody can, enlist my help. I just like to tell people that one of my specialties is helping women to clean out prior to pregnancy or help them during pregnancy to significantly lower the risks of a chronic illness developing in their child. Okay,
good. And everychoicecounts.org, right?
Yes.
And that has information on the site about when the next podcast is coming and what it'll be.
Exactly.
And have you got archives on there for the old ones?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. That'd be a great resource. So thank you. That just primes us for the next discussion, I think, and hopefully that'll be pretty soon.
Yes, I love to talk about that subject, so I look forward to it.
Okay, sounds good. Hold on and we'll say goodbye in the break here.
Sure.
So there goes Dara Berger, you guys. She's really a nice guest to have on because she's got such a great concern for the welfare of all of us, but especially kids, and, a focus on solutions. It's just solutions are a little bit challenging at the moment when you have the whole power structure that's supposed to be taking care of everybody being the main danger to all the people they're supposed to be taking care of. But I think she's doing a great job and putting out a lot of ideas, the simple ones like, just paying more attention to your child and having more direct communication, honestly, but in a way that's not too distressing about what's happening, with backups about, if they're old enough, what to do in certain situations at school. If they need to be picked up and come home right away, have that open, and means of communication, and not to take any invasive treatments at school that they're starting to offer without having to tell the parents, don't be part of any of that. Get them involved or give them a chance to be involved in gardening with their food and outdoor activities and, normal things in nature that are being taken away right now. They need extra support in those areas. And I think, Dara's got a lot of good input on that. I would think that her podcast, which I personally haven't had a chance to hear yet, but would like to, would be really good. And that one was at everychoicecounts.org. And her main website where everything is Dara Berger, DaraBerger.com, or Dara Berger Health Coaching, in which she'll share personalized information with you if you want to have an appointment with her. And that's at DaraBergerHealthCoaching. I didn't write down org or com, but you can try them both. But I think that's probably com. That's my guess, but try both. DaraBergerHealthCoaching.com. And that would be really valuable personalized input if you're in a situation where that would be useful for you and or your child. And it's not only for parents or for women expecting children, but it's really for anybody, because we're all children of various ages in these older bodies, that need the same kind of support in this type of situation. Also, remember, she mentioned, I wrote myself a note about it, this free book that's going to be coming out called Autism Essentials. And she doesn't know exactly where it's going to be available, but stay in touch with what she's doing on her sites, and it'll probably be announced there. And we may do the same thing too, because it sounds like a valuable thing to know about when it's available. And stay in touch with us, lostartsradio.com, and our Saturday show, remember, which is usually on current events. And usually it's stuff that I want to share with you. Sometimes we have other people come in too. And that's Saturdays at 4:30 Pacific and 7:30 Eastern Time, afternoon, evening, immediately before, or actually about half an hour before the club meeting, Planetary Healing Club. And that's where we get into a deeper level of these things, working with yourself and your kids. And it's a non-censored environment, a private group meeting where all of us, me and all the members, meet live every week, and we share information, and it's a very useful, supportive environment. So you're invited to be there if you want to. PlanetaryHealingClub.com is the portal to it that you can check out, or if you have questions, write to me, Richard at LostArtsRadio.com, and I'll help you see if it's something that would be worth your time to be part of. But you're certainly invited if you think it would be. And if you want to support our work and keep us on the air, you notice how many commercials we run during the shows. It's a very small number, like 0. Because if I suggest a product to you, I really want it to be because I think it's really seems to be something useful and good. And if it changes and I don't think it's good anymore, I want to, tell you that. And it's easier if we're not running those things as commercials. So if you want to support us and keep our work going, there are donate buttons at lostartsradio.com and lostartsresearchinstitute.org, and also subscribestar.com/lostartsradio. We're on brighteon.com in case you're listening on a different platform, and that's a non-censoring platform that's really good to be subscribed to. And the subscribing URL is brighteon, brighteon.com/channel/Lost Arts Radio. And you can subscribe to our channel and be notified when new stuff comes out. And then these Sunday shows with inspiring and educational guests like Dara are continuing. And we'll have the best people on that we can. There's all the archives for that are still available for free. And I encourage you to use them as appropriate as an educational resource. If you have anybody that you want to suggest, comments, questions, anything like that, let us know and email them in. There's a contact form on the sites, and we read every one of those and reply as appropriate when we can. So anyway, thanks for spending the time with me and Dara and Doug Diamond, who's supporting the whole show with the technical part. And I appreciate you guys very much. You're the key to not only the show, which you're the whole point of, but solutions to bringing back the world to sanity. You're not an insignificant person like the authorities want us to believe. It's the opposite. And you're the star of your whole sci-fi movie that we're in at the moment, and we can turn it around. So take care of yourself. It's the best way you can move in that direction. And we'll look forward to talking to you very shortly. Thanks for being here.